The Good Neighbor Network, FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and online at WGNSradio.com.
What is up? We're the one show giving you the truth about personal finance. This is Financial Coaching Radio, and I'm your host, Jason Qualls, certified financial planner, one of the only independent commission-free financial advisors in Rutherford County. For all about me, be sure to check out jasonquallscfp.com. That's JASONQUALLSCFP.com. If you want to jump in with the questions, comments, even your disagreements, click email the show at financialcoachingradio.com. We'll be talking estate planning later with John Baker. Got a good segment coming up regarding Tennessee and its specialty or specialization in some of the tax coding when it comes to trust planning. But first, let's talk about the S&P 500 ETF. This is an interesting title to an article. I'm not sure if the person who wrote the article is actually should be writing this article, let's say, but it's, should you go all in on an S&P 500 index ETF for retirement savings? One, let's break down what she's saying. Go all in, does that mean the only thing we own is an S&P 500 ETF? What is the S&P 500? Well, it's an index created by the Standard & Poor's company that usually is the 500 largest companies on the U.S. stock exchange. ETF basically is another word for index funds in most cases, but it stands for exchange traded fund. You can have an index fund that's a mutual fund or an index fund that's an ETF, but yeah, very similar in this case. But should you have that? It's an incomplete strategy, incomplete income strategy for retirees. She goes on to talk about the S&P is not a complete retirement strategy. The S&P's 500 dividend yield is historically quite low, typically in the 1% to 2% range. For someone living off their portfolio in retirement, that's not nearly enough income to cover real expenses without regularly selling shares, which becomes a problem if those sales coincide with the downturn. So what they're suggesting is capital gains, we need dividend income in cases of down market. And I'm on the opposite end of this extreme because I could give a flip less about dividend income. I care about total return. If my total return is what it needs to be, if I'm drawing down income, I don't care where it comes from. Dividends comes from capital gains. As long as my total return is what it is, that's all that matters. And what they're leaving out is that typically if you have a higher dividend yielding investment, and let's say you're using that to meet your retirement income, you probably have less capital gains. With all in all, in the end, 2 plus 2 always equals 4. So dividends plus capital gains, if they both equal, if dividends is 5% and capital gains is 5%, your return is 10%. Or if your dividend is 2% and your capital gain is 8%, your return is still 10%. Care. This is someone trying to spin an article, in my belief, to downplay the value of simply index investing. Talking about diversity, should go without saying. Owning one asset class like large company U.S. stocks, it's not meant to be diversified. Why would you ever own one asset class? Let me just give you a little bit of opinion here. Why would you even diversify? Well, in my view, if you look at diversification and what it does, diversification lowers risk, lowers volatility. It doesn't necessarily increase performance. Those who are trying to diversify are trying to limit downside risk to some degree. So you, by default, don't necessarily care the most about capital appreciation and long-term market growth. You still care, but it's no longer the priority. If you don't care anything about market volatility, for various reasons I won't go into in this segment, then the best asset class to own in almost every scenario or every time period you look at is going to be large cap U.S. stocks, by the way, of the S&P 500. So, this person writing the article did interview some probably intelligent people, but she probably just needed to have paper to turn in that day, because some of the tips, while on the surface, seem to be common sense, I don't believe that they are practical in the real world, other than just getting people to question why simple investing is not better. Goes on to say in this one comment, while the S&P 500 ETF, well, she calls it that, just the index, may be a great tool for long-term growth, one interviewee explains it's important to focus on income. Dividend-focused ETFs, REITs, and bond ETFs may all do a better job of providing stable income, but they very well may provide stable income as far as a dividend yield, but those assets aren't going to have the same capital appreciation as the other index. And again, we get back to the math, 2 + 2 always equals 4. Total return is really what matters. Who cares if it comes from dividends or market appreciation or capital appreciation? But nonetheless, I thought I'd share with you. Bottom line, no matter what you're doing, you got to make sure your investment strategy matches up with what you're trying to accomplish. Know what you're trying to accomplish. If you're retired, you need XYZ amount of income. Build your investment strategy around accomplishing that, and leave out all the other noise that the financial media wants to shove down our throats. This is Financial Coaching Radio. I'm Jason Qualls, certified financial planner. Stick around. I'll be back right after this.
Run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Let me tell you, God Almighty's gonna cut you down. Go tell that long-tongue liar. Go tell that midnight rider. Tell the gambler, rammer, backbiter. Tell them God Almighty's gonna cut them down. Stop, God Almighty, let me tell you the news. My head's been wet with the midnight dew.
Hey, Financial Coaching Radio listeners. If you don't understand exactly how your financial advisor is compensated, you could be in big trouble. My name is Jason Qualls, a commission-free certified financial planner. To learn more about why my process is so unique, go to jasonquallscfp.com or call 878-2134 today. Okay, folks, I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. If you were my client or a loved one, I would never let you get your wills done online. This is truly a case of where you only get what you pay for, and those you leave behind will be the ones to pay the price. Go see estate planning attorney John Baker today by calling 896-5621 or go to bakercounsel.com. Again, that's 896-5621 or bakercounsel.com. Get the expert estate planning advice you need today.
Did you know that the U.S. tax code has over 70,000 pages? This is precisely why you must have a tax expert on your team. The folks at TH&W CPAs have been providing their expertise to individuals and businesses in Middle Tennessee for over 50 years. And now they have an office right here in Murfreesboro. Call Kevin Sizemore today with TH&W CPAs at 848-1072. That's 848-1072 or online at thwcpa.com.
Run on for a long time. You may throw your rock and hide your hand, working in the dark against your fellow man. As sure as God made the day and the night, what you do in the dark will be brought to the light. You may run and hide, slip and slide, trying to take the mote from your neighbor's eye. As sure as God made
Welcome back to One Show, giving you the truth about personal finance. This is Financial Coaching Radio. I'm your host, Jason Qualls, certified planner. Joining me now is John Baker, estate planning attorney, to talk just that, estate planning. John, first up on the question for you today, we talk about planning for the documents that you need in your passing of assets or preparing for your disability or the like thereof. But what about funeral cost? Has that been something that you've seen has impacted people? And how are people dealing with that? What is the process to ensure this is not a headache after the fact, and anything that would kind of be those last rites things in the world of planning for someone's death?
Yeah, so I think, particularly with the retired couple or maybe an older couple, to to pre-plan as much of that as you can is really helpful for the families, because if you think about it, if nothing's planned, there's quite a bit to do when a parent or a spouse passes. And so
What's the funeral cost in Middle Tennessee these days?
yeah, well, it depends on, but if it's a full traditional funeral with casket, I mean, it's probably going to exceed, easily over $10,000.
And that seems like that's always been the figure. Is it always been held pretty close to that?
Well, it's
not one of those
probably really, for
inflation
most
adjustments.
people, it's probably going to be more than that. Probably a few thousand more, depending on what all is selected. But so I'm not really sure kind of what the inflation rate is on that, but that seems to be what I see, because I have people come in planning where they have prepaid funeral and burial plans, and it's pretty common to see $12,000, $14,000.
So that would be a good indicator of what the cost is.
Yeah, now that's a full traditional. Of course, a cremation is quite a bit less expensive. And
Do you suggest prepaying for funeral costs?
Typically not, except in certain cases where you might need to do it. For me, it comes up in Medicaid eligibility, because a prepaid burial plan is an exempt asset for purposes of Medicaid, eligibility for people, facing nursing home care.
And what is all involved in a prepaid funeral? Is it,
Well, so
that's what I'm trying to get
yeah.
to the point of. Is like people think, you go to a funeral, you go to a place, you listen, you meet with family, then the next day you go to the cemetery. But there's a lot more involved in that.
Right. So, for example, that price I was mentioning, maybe somewhere $10,000 to $14,000. That's not the headstone. Okay, that's more. That's not the plot.
Now, is all those things
So-
included in prepaid funeral if you were to do that for your Medicaid asset spin down?
Yeah. Well, now of course the cemetery and the funeral home may not be the same place. Depends on where you're doing it and who. But plots are quite expensive today. They're several $1,000s. Then you got the headstone, which can easily be $2,000 or $3,000 depending on what you're selecting. So now you add that, you're hitting $20,000 maybe. So it can be quite a bit if you're doing the full traditional. And so, but except in the Medicaid cases where they have to do it for Medicaid eligibility, I don't have a lot of people prepaying. You can, and you can talk to the funeral homes about that, and they can give you all the details. And certainly older people are more likely to look at that. For example, I'll give you an example in my own life. My grandparents prepaid in the 1980s, okay, everything. And one of them...
how long was it until they passed?
Yeah, one died in 1998 and the other died in 2008. And after my grandmother died in 2008, I never forget the funeral director saying, well, your grandparents got a pretty good deal on that.
So they have to honor that, I assume.
Yeah, and he said they bought the second most expensive plan we had, and it was all covered. But the real nice thing about it was that when my grandparents at that point lived in a small town, none of the family lived there anymore. My aunt and my dad, all the family lived other places. So everything was done. I mean, everything. The only thing we really had to do was, the burial clothing. But casket, all
Made it real
arrangements.
easy for the
I
family.
mean, it was such a big help. So to the extent you do plan or maybe prepay, you really are helping your family. And, pre-planning, if you're not going to pay, you can at least select the things that you want.
Well, that's where I was
So-
going with the estate planning documents, your wills and trusts. How specific are people when they lay out their final wishes, and is that a good thing? And what if you don't have any of your final wishes listed in your estate planning documents? What kind of positives or negatives that come along with that?
Yeah, so you can put those burial and find your remains and all that information into your will, or maybe even a healthcare power of attorney, and that can be good. But the most important thing is just to make sure the family knows, and if there might be disputes, if we have family, discord, and you want cremation, you really do need to get that in writing, either at a funeral home or in your legal documents, because if there's a dispute about cremation and
So
cremation might not happen.
So, but they would have no problem burying you.
Yeah.
Is that just because it's the more traditional, common thing?
Yeah, I think so. In this part of the country, cremation. If there's a dispute, the funeral home, at least in my experience, is probably going to want some authority for that, because they don't want to. They're going to trying to find the person who has authority. And if we have a dispute about that, like if you've got some brothers and sisters fighting over how dad should be.
Has any of that changed over the last 10 or 20 years of how people have decided how they want to handle that? Are they being more proactive, or are they still just, I'm dead, let my family decide? Or
I think more and more people want cremations, what I've seen.
Is it for the cost?
I think so. I think a lot of it's cost. Yeah.
Because the casket is one of the most expensive things.
Yeah, and the plots and the headstones. Now you can have cremation and still have a plot and a headstone too. So
yeah, that's true.
So you don't doesn't necessarily mean you won't have a.
Have you been involved in any dispute over someone's final wishes?
Yes, it's been quite a few years, fortunately, but and it's been over the cremation issue.
So it's not really a location.
A couple of times where it's ended up in some way or another in court.
I can see cremation and maybe location. So one family member wants some closer to them, the other one wants it closer to their place, and
right. Yeah, you can.
And that never was, or maybe it's an assumption of what they thought someone would want.
Yeah, you could have that. That's right.
And probably not as something as common arguing about in an estate as, say, money. That's probably the most common thing.
Yeah, it's going to be the most.
Right, it's always the money thing.
Yeah,
right?
that's much more common. Or the stuff,
Yeah, who gets the family heirlooms and things like that.
Yeah.
So, would you suggest being very detailed in your wishes if they're known, if you're going through the estate planning document process?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think you should, but all the detail doesn't have to be written like in the power of attorney or in the will.
It could just be a handwritten note, maybe a typed out letter.
Like in my estate planning, typically I have a little sheet, kind of a formatted sheet where people can write in. Things they want for final, memorial instructions.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be part of the document. So it's something that's easily changed.
Right.
Well, that brings us back to the main part of estate planning, which is the documents. And getting the wills, powers of attorney, those are the core of most people's estate plan. And using someone that's qualified to do those things. So let's talk on that just for a minute or so. Law school, I would assume you guys cover a lot of areas in law school. I'm not sure how you get down to how you decide what area of practice you're going to practice in. If that's something you decide in law school, you decide later. But the estate planning world, it's kind of it's a unique thing, right? It's not like criminal, it's not like divorce, it's its own thing.
Yeah. So in law school, your core subjects like criminal law, contracting, constitutional law. You're going to have a whole year of each course typically. In wills and estates, I think most law students will have 1 semester on it. Now your law student,
even though that's the thing we're all going to do is die.
That's right. That's right.
Is it just because it's not a large area of practice?
Yeah, it's kind of you get into some of the more specific subjects. You start focusing in. Then it's going to. You may only end up having 1 course, or maybe you're at a school and they've got a enhanced program and maybe they got a couple of courses on it. If you were interested, you could take that as an elective maybe.
Right. Well, if you're ready to get your estate planning documents on order, make sure you're hiring an estate planning attorney, someone whose focus is their practice on that area that meets your needs. If you have a question for John off the air, you can always reach him online, bakercounsel.com, bakercounsel.com. This is Financial Coaching Radio. Stick around. We'll be back with more and John Baker right after this.
you have a financial plan? I'm not talking about a worthless binder full of pretty charts and graphs. Are you certain you're on track to reach all your financial goals? A comprehensive financial plan is about so much more than just your IRA and mutual funds. It involves risk management, tax planning, professional investment management, retirement, and estate planning. Make sure your entire financial life is in order by calling me, Jason Qualls, a commission-free certified financial planner, at 878-2134, or go to my website, jasonquallscfp.com. Buying a house is stressful, and so is shopping for a mortgage. Take my advice and get a second opinion on the mortgage for your new home or your refinance. Not all banks and mortgage companies are created equal. Trust me on this. Call my friend Marshall Sparkman with Franklin Synergy Bank at 615-439-0885. Great team, great process, and the best rates. Marshall Sparkman with Franklin Synergy Bank at 615-439-0885.
Welcome back to the show. This is Financial Coaching Radio, the one show giving you the truth about personal finance. Catch us online at financialcoachingradio.com. I'm Jason Qualls, certified financial planner. Let's switch it up and talk a little bit about Tennessee and estate planning and trust planning. John, you've said this before. John Baker is along for the ride today, estate planning attorney. You've said it before that Tennessee is a strong state for trust planning. And this is an article that just came out not very long ago, but talking about different types of trust and why Tennessee is special in that way. Can you give us a little bit more insight of how Tennessee legislators have done a good job in this area, and why is it a state-specific thing?
Yeah, so in Tennessee over a period of 15 years or so has implemented a lot of updates to trust and tax law to make Tennessee a really favorable state for trust planning and for a variety of different types of trusts. We've enacted a uniform trust code dealing with the whole structure of trust planning and operation of trusts, and it's really good for persons looking to create trust plans. We have the code deals with revocable trusts and asset protection trusts.
So where are these things handled in court? Is it a state-specific thing? Is it a county-specific thing?
So for the most part, estate and trust law is a state matter, state law matter. Now, of course, federal taxes is a federal matter, but
unless it's a federal tax issue, it's a state.
Property law, trust law, contracting law, things like that are mostly matters of state law under state statutes. And so states compete in this area, okay? We kind of have
because they want to attract people to come in here that will live here, to retire here, and pass away here?
Right, exactly. And they want people to park money here, even non-residents. So they make the state appealing for tax planning. For trust planning and tax planning as well. And so for example, we have what's called a Tennessee Community Property Trust. This is a trust that is designed for married couples. It's to take advantage of some planning in capital gain tax matters, basically to save capital gain taxes for a married couple. And that's a unique statute. I think now several states have them. But
capital gains in the form of federal?
Yes. So basically, I don't probably don't get too deep in it, but anyways, it can provide advantages for tax planning, capital gain tax planning for married couples. And Tennessee, the trust companies, the banks, they can market this nationwide. The person that's making the trust doesn't have to live in Tennessee.
So let's give a general scenario.
Husband
dies
trustee.
And he's got some old Walmart stock, and let's say he's got $300,000 of capital gains in the stock. So how does this trust language in Tennessee help out with a spouse?
Well, it has to do with death and step up in basis at death. Now I know that's a lot of tax,
which is a federal thing, right?
But it's and essentially when, let's say that someone has the stock and it's worth, you know, $300,000, and it's in the husband and wife's joint account. Husband dies. Well, that stock account's going to get a 50% step up in basis due to the husband's death. Not 100% because the wife is still living. With the community property trust, when that husband dies, it gets 100% step up, not just 50%.
This is a way to title joint assets.
Yes, it's marital. This is marital items. It's a marriage, husband-wife planning.
So that's not a federal thing there, right? So the federal step-up basis is if one person owns it, they get stepped up at their death. But if it's
what it's doing is it applies to federal capital gain taxes, but it's under state trust law or state law, period. And
so some states don't have this
right.
this thing where, say, you passed away with a joint account and you don't have this joint trust.
That's right.
You still only get that 50% stepped up
Right.
basis.
So in Tennessee, you only get it if you create one of these trusts. Okay, if you don't create the trust, you don't get that what we call double step up.
And then is this trust mainly used for these types of like investment assets, whether it be property or stock or bonds?
When I do them, it's most likely going to be people that own rental real properties or like you said, appreciated stocks, bonds, and that sort of
That
thing.
it's best if it works in this scenario if it's joint owned property.
Yeah, this would be for jointly owned. And now if it's individually owned, let's say the husband owns it himself and he dies, well, that's 100% step up because he was the sole owner. So, yeah, this is marital assets, marital planning.
Well, it seems like one of those political things that some politicians say, well, I own a lot of property jointly. I want to get some benefit of this, so let's pass a law,
Yeah.
right?
But I think there's been a proactive business lobby.
What about business assets? Still a part of the deal? If it's jointly owned business that's appreciated? If it's company stock, say an S corporation or something?
I've never done it with that, so I can't tell you for sure how that would work, under the corporate laws. But it might. But I don't know because I haven't done that with the actual operating business under an entity like a corporation. But it's something to
I'm trying to
look at.
get my mind around. So if it's a joint owned, no trust involved, joint owned husband and wife, and the husband dies, 50% of the assets get a stepped up basis, and then the other. If she were to sell any part of her half while she's alive, then you go to the original basis, right?
Yeah. So let's say that the typical scenario, there's some rental properties, and it's owned by the husband and wife.
Which you can't separate half and half.
Right. Husband dies, and wife says, "Well, I want to get out of the rental business and I want to sell these things." Okay. With the trust, and remember, with real estate, those rental properties may have been depreciated to the point they have zero basis. So when that property sells, there might be the whole net proceeds may be taxable as capital gain. But if we do this, if it's owned in this trust, this community property trust, husband dies, wife wants to sell the rental properties. She can sell them, and it's going to be valued 100% at the date of death of the husband, which is going to wipe out a lot of gain.
That's a great thing, and I think this is my first time even. I've heard you speak of it, but we've never really dove deep into it.
Yeah.
Is that not some way a violation of federal tax code?
No, it's actually taking advantage of the tax code because certain states by default are community property states. Most are not.
That's the kicker there.
And so for years, let's say it's California. California is what we call a community property state by default. Okay, so for years, California residents have had this full step up.
And
so
other states
finally,
haven't.
States like Tennessee said, well, hey, can we amend our laws so that our resident, for people in Tennessee can get this?
But still, that's where I would have figured that, joint owned assets, capital gains taxes, it was a federal thing. I know that's where I made that assumption. It's like, if it's a joint owned asset, I don't care if it's stock, bonds, or real estate or whatever. That if it's joint owned, the federal code steps in, and you only get half of stepped up basis.
Whether
it's California or Tennessee or wherever.
It's federal tax law, but federal law will look to state law as it relates to property ownership and titling and that sort of thing. So they have
Because
to
every
defer.
state is unique in that
Yeah,
area.
and so they're going to, and so so that's basically how that works.
So I guess a non-community property state that does not have these trust rules in place is less competitive in comparison to Tennessee.
Right, but like I said, you don't have to be a Tennessee resident to have a community property trust, but you do have to have a Tennessee trustee.
It's all good information. John Baker, estate planning attorney, offices right here in Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, bakercounsel.com. John, if someone has a question for you by phone, what's that phone number to reach you?
615-896-4154. Thank you, Jason. Always great to talk to you and be here.
All right, John, good. Glad we covered that. That was really in-depth stuff on trust planning. This is Financial Coaching Radio. We're back right after this. Keep it locked in right here on WGN.
How much are your investments costing you each year? Most people don't have a clue. Why is this extremely important? Because overpaying by just 1% a year in fees and expenses can reduce your account balance at retirement by 28%. You heard me right. 28% less at retirement. I'm commission-free, certified financial planner Jason Qualls. I don't sell financial products. I don't accept commissions or kickbacks from investment companies. Give me a call today for a free unbiased investment review at 878-2134 or visit my website, jasonquallscfp.com. A recent undercover study found that over 89% of paid tax preparers made mistakes. You heard me right, over 89%. Is your tax person making mistakes? Tax mistakes cost you money and may even lead to an IRS audit. I recommend you get a second opinion on your tax return today by calling Tutherow Helen Welch CPAs at 848-1072. Tutherow Helen Welch has been providing tax services to individuals and businesses for over 50 years. So call them today at 848-1072 or go to thwcpa.com.
Welcome back to the show. As you probably already know, this is Financial Coaching Radio, and I'm your host, Jason Qualls, Certified Financial Planner. Jason Qualls, Certified Financial Planner, can be found online at jasonquallscfp.com. Makes total good sense, don't you think? If you ever have a question for me, you can hit me up there. Also go to the show, financialcoachingradio.com. There you can listen to the show every day. You can listen to the show anytime that you want. All the archives are there. All the past shows are listed by date. Find something that interests you. We try to talk about, we don't do as many of the random topics as we used to. If there's something you want to hear, don't hesitate to reach out. Say, hey, I want to learn more about this. I want to get your take on this. Because this radio show says this, you say that, or I haven't heard your opinion on the matter, hit me up. Email the show at financialcoachingradio.com. As always, making sure you're getting a second opinion on your investments and your financial plan, because most financial planners, to put it bluntly, are just financial sales hacks. And they hate it when I tell you that, but that is the truth. But if you're working with an independent, fee-only, certified financial planner, the likelihood of you actually getting some advice that is in your best interest substantially goes up versus the sales hacks. Independent, they only work for you. Certified financial planner, the highest, most respected designation in the business. Fee only means they only take compensation from you, not sales commissions. Go to jasonquallscfp.com for more. I appreciate you listening today and every day. Be back at you tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel. Keep it locked in right here on WGNS for more local talk coming your way.